Good morning and welcome back to another Lloyd 3 the Mighty Mini Camper video. Just made it back to Winnipeg last week, and although I'm happy to be home, there are a lot of wonderful things about being here, but snow in April is not necessarily one of those wonderful things. Perhaps unless you're a farmer who needs that moisture for the fields. Anyways, I was fortunate enough to complete a little project that I've been putting off for quite a while, getting the LED strip lighting onto my awnings and the Underglow lighting for the trailer. Keep pack rats away when we're camping in the Southwest. And luckily I got that done just before this little snow came. So today I'm going to spend a little time and go over that project, some of the things that worked, some of the things that didn't work, and how it might be a little easier next time. Hope you enjoy it.
These Fiamma awnings come with a really nice channel, both on the case and on the lead bar, for installing LED light strips. The first question I needed to answer was, do I want to install them on one or the other or both? The factors that I considered included the cost of the LED light strips, along with the power consumption of the strips, and also the directionality of where those light strips would be installed. The light strip on the lead bar is kind of angled back towards the trailer, which is kind of a nice thing when you want to make sure you're only lighting your own space at a campground. The light strip on the case is angled a little bit away from the camper, and although when the awnings extended, it should do a pretty good job of shielding the light from other campers, I was a little concerned that it might be spreading our light outside of our own space. So I decided to start by just installing light strips on the lead bar, which are angled a little bit back towards the camper. Fiamma also makes a really nice LED light strip kit that you can purchase from their suppliers. They are quite a bit pricier than other solutions, but they do come with a very nice lens that covers the light strips, which I really like. The light strip only comes though in a single color, tone, and brightness of neutral white, so you don't get some of the RGB options of other alternative light strips that might be installed. So I decided to go ahead with just purchasing a more inexpensive light strip kit off of Amazon, and of course there's many options for purchasing those. I started by removing the end cap of the lead bar on the awning. These have only a single screw and come out quite easily. The bulk of the job is after installing the light strip into the channel. We need to figure out a way to take the wiring back along those extension arms alongside the trailer and connect it to a power source. The connectors on the LED light strip controller are pretty big, you can see in this picture here. So rather than just drilling a hole as instructed in the Fiamma LED light strip kit instructions, I decided to make a little notch in the end of the lead bar so that I could slip the wire through there without having to drill a hole big enough for those connectors to get through. I then repeated that process on the case of the awning, removing the end cap and then using a grinder to create a little notch for the LED light strip wiring to exit the awning, so that I can then extend those wires on to connect to our power source. I cleaned up the edges as well as I could with a hand file. I also used a round, small little file. I think maybe that came from my chainsaw sharpening kit. But that cleaned up those edges pretty nice. I want to make sure that those wires don't get damaged over time with the vibration. It's a bit comforting to know that these LED light strip kits are so cheap, so anything I do wrong or need to replace in the future isn't going to cost me an arm and a leg. So after placing the LED light strip, which comes with a self-adhesive tape on it, I just cut the end to length at one of the specified cut marks and covered the end with a little bit of electrical tape, and then screwed the end cap back on after feeding the wiring through my little channel that I'd created and up into the awning. So after connecting that wiring to the LED controller, I had ordered some extension cable wire cord, 22 gauge, that I connected that controller wiring to. I got a little fancy and decided, since I had some heat shrink wrap, to go ahead and use that, and I even pulled out my old soldering gun and soldered that connection together. A little fancier than I usually do, but made me feel a little bit more secure about that. And this was the result. I think it looked pretty decent. So now the task is to somehow feed those wires back along the extension arms so that when the awning is rolled out, the wiring doesn't restrict any of the awning movement. Where we have the light strip into that channel, through that little channel I ground into the end, up the loop-de-loop for the controller. Hopefully we'll still be able to use the remote controller with it when it's closed. Up over the top and into the top of that channel on the awning arm. I didn't realize before I started, but these awning arms, actually the extension arms, have a little channel in the top of them. That was quite nice. Fiamma does sell a kit for keeping those wires in place in the top of the extension arms. I just used a little piece of tape and secured at a couple spots to make sure that the wiring stays in those channels and doesn't pop out. A little loop at the end. Maybe I can show that to you. A little loop there. I did extend it, make sure that it does fine there. Back along the top, it exits right here, back to the channel, slides behind there, and then out the little channel that I did the same for. And then we'll run it back over to my power source. I think I'll just take it off of that exterior light that I installed. I was very fortunate that the mounting brackets that I used for the awning had very nice channels that I could feed my extension wire back through and reach the power source that I chose, which was the exterior light just outside the door of the camper. And so I just connected into that and actually left that exterior light just disconnected. I've never liked that light so much, since it lights up quite a bright area. Even though I did choose the kind of amber color, it tended to spread its light further than I liked to do. It's nice to protect the dark night skies when we can camping. I know a lot of stargazers appreciate that, and I'd like to respect that whenever possible. That light was already switched, so that made that part of the project pretty easy. I decided to add an LED strip around the bottom edge of the camper. I know that it is recommended to have some sort of lighting when you're camping at some places, particularly in the Southwest, where pack rats can get in there and do some damage to wiring and other things that may be under the camper. I don't really have much going on underneath my camper, but I decided that I would go ahead and do that just in case it might help in deterring any rodents from chewing into the insulation under my trailer. That was a little harder job to connect the wiring for. I did go straight down through the flooring of the trailer and brought it up to a power source I had in the V-nose of the trailer and installed a switch, double switch that I had. I went ahead and added another light to the space above our kitchen sink inside. Doing these wiring jobs is fairly straightforward, although it's not something that I'm very experienced at, and inevitably during the process looks like a tangled mess that I'll never get straight. By the end of the process, it typically looks pretty nice and kind of something that's enjoyable to complete when it's done successfully. And there's plenty of times that I've had to redo stuff until I do get it right. But this turned out pretty good, I think, and it's nice to have each of those lights on a switch. Each of the LED strip lighting kits does come with its own controller that you can use to change the colors, change the tone, change the brightness, and I like being able to do that, but when I get them set where I want, at this point I can just switch them on and off with the switches for those. I did the same process for the rear awning as I did for the side awning. Although the awnings aren't extended, you can see how they do light towards the trailer, and that's kind of nice, and I'm looking forward to using them once we get out camping. So the adhesive on these LED light strips gave me a little bit of trouble. If you weren't really careful as you were pulling off the tape on the adhesive strip, the adhesive gel type substance would come off with the tape as you pulled it off. I had a couple times where, as I was trying to do that underneath the trailer, I think I ended up with some of that gel adhesive not staying on the light strip very well. So I ended up buying some double-sided heavy-duty waterproof mounting tape that I'll use to reattach that. I also bought some Gorilla Clear tape to anchor down some of the corners where I make a little loop when I make a 90-degree turn underneath the trailer, and hopefully those will work well over time.
Hi, thanks again for joining us in this video with the Lloyd 3 The Mighty Mini Camper. If you like this content, please
Like,
subscribe,
and hit that notification button.
See you next time.